Hi, you guys. We are on our second to last set of roots weeks 21 and 22. And I wanted to walk you through just how you use the words, stuff like that, like I've been doing since we've been going remote. Um, Again, this is the second to last set, so we're almost done. Kind of hard to believe that when we finish, you will have learned, hopefully, 240 words, which is kind of crazy. So this week, our first root is strain or strict, which means to bind or to draw tight. And I'm sure you can think of lots of words that use this, like restrict and things like that. But I gave you constrict and restrain. Constrict means to make narrower, especially by encircling pressure. That's why a boa constrictor is called a boa constrictor, because they literally wrap around their prey and squeeze them really tight, and make them narrower by killing them and then eating them. And then restrain means to hold back. So you might practice restraint in yourself, like emotionally, you might be holding yourself back when you get angry, or you might have to restrain, like your dog on a leash, if they see another dog or something like that. But of course, means back. And so restrain just means to hold back. Next is ped or pod, which means foot. And that's why pedals on a bicycle or on anything are called pedals, because you use your foot to move them. But I gave you pedestrian and podiatrist. So, pedestrian is somebody who's walking. We often talk about how pedestrians have the right of way when cars are driving down the street, when you're in a crosswalk, especially if you're a pedestrian, somebody who's on foot, then you have a right of way over a car, although you should still be smart and not just run out in front of a car. And then podiatrist is a foot doctor. They just are specializing in anything that relates to the foot. Next is seed, spelled C-E-D-E, and then seed, spelled C-E-E-D, and then cess, all of which mean go or yield. So I gave you proceed and recession. So proceed means to go forward. Pro, we know, means forward, and so that's an easy one. Literally means exactly what it looks like. So if you were giving a presentation in class and I stopped you for some reason, I might then say, okay, sorry, you can proceed, meaning, you can go ahead and continue, you can go forward. People will talk about proceeding with an activity or things like that, meaning that it's going to go ahead and happen. And then your next word is recession, which is a period of temporary economic decline, which has happened, over the years in America and in other countries, not to be confused with depression, which is a period of like pretty serious, not temporary economic decline. But recessions are when the economy kind of goes up and down. And so when it recesses, it goes, of course, backwards. So like the money and all of the economic, progress sort of kind of goes back temporarily, and then things go back to normal. And that happens. Hom, H-O-M, meaning man. So I gave you homicide, which I know we've had before and you know what it means, but it is probably the best word for showcasing hom, meaning man. And of course, it means to kill another person. Man, of course, in this case, is the generic term meaning human beings, not just male gender people. And then I gave you hombre, which is obviously Spanish, but it's slang for a man. You might hear somebody say, probably not much anymore, but when I was a kid, people used to say things like, "Ooh, that dude is a tough hombre." And so it's just a slang word in English for man, while it's actually a Spanish word. Duke, D-U-C, means to lead. So detectives often, use deduction or induction, the two types of reasoning, to kind of figure something out. Deducing is the most common way for them to sort of solve a problem. When you deduce, you draw a logical conclusion. And so D in this case means down. And so when you deduce, you're sort of like leading down from the clue. So if you're like, okay, this happened, then this happened, then this happened, and you're putting all of that together, and then you come to a logical conclusion, then you're deducing it because you're sort of starting at the top and working your way down to the bottom. And you're kind of like, aha, I figured it out. Um, Inductive reasoning is a little bit different. And that also kind of comes from like philosophy and things like that. So it's a little more intense. Most people deduce things. And then educate is your second word. And it means to obviously to give somebody training in a particular field. You know what educate means. But the reason that educate comes from Duke, which means to lead, is E is a prefix that means out, or away, which we'll see later. It's actually in the same list. And so when you are educating somebody, you're literally sort of like leading them out of ignorance and like a lack of knowledge and into knowing something. Just a really fancy kind of breakdown of the word educate. Next is mater or maître, which means mother. And there are lots of words for this, like maternal and things like that. But I chose matriarch and I chose alma mater, which is something you might have heard, but not actually known where it comes from or what it means. So a matriarch is a mother figure. Doesn't have to be an actual mother. It could just be somebody who sort of has that like mother figure for a country or a family. Some families are led by like, the grandmother or the aunt or things like that. The Queen of England is referred to as the matriarch of the country. I mean, she's not everybody's mom in England, of course, but she is looked at as a mother figure because she's the female sort of lead of the country. Um, and then the next one, alma mater, is a phrase from the Latin, literally straight from Latin, which means generous or nourishing mother. And that phrase is used to refer to your school or your university that you graduate from. So, like, for example, if you go to Nashua North will eventually be your alma mater. And then if you go to college, wherever you graduate from for college will become your alma mater. And it also refers to the song, like the school song is often called the alma mater from that school. Um, and the reason that it's like that is because there's always been in education sort of this idea of kind of like parenting and helping kids grow and that sort of, thought process that the school sort of nourishes you educationally and kind of then sends you on your way. And so that's where that comes from. So if we're going to have mater, which is the Latin word for mother, then we have to have pater, which is the Latin word for father. And for this one, I gave you paternal and patron. So paternal just means somebody that's father-like, describing like a paternal action. Is just saying that somebody's acting like a dad. If you've ever said to your friend who is the same age as you, but gives you some sort of like advice, thanks, dad, then maybe they're acting paternal when that's happening. And then patron is somebody who gives support to a person or organization. Often this is financial support, patrons of the arts and things like that you might hear referred to. And those are people who are donating money to keep that art program going. And the reason that this word comes from father is that idea of that, like your father would support you and give you the money kind of thing. And so it comes from sort of a metaphorical father figure who is helping support the organization or the person. Next is path, which means feelings, emotions, or disease, which is kind of odd that it has all those meanings, but it does. Feelings and emotions make sense to go together, but disease, not so much. So apathy is the root that I gave you that had to do with feelings. And the words sympathy and empathy also fall under this as well. They all have that same path root. But I gave you apathy because apathy means not caring. A as a prefix means without, as you might remember. And so if you are apathetic, it means you have no feelings about that. And it is a pretty negative word. Students are often referred to as being apathetic about school. And if a teacher says that, then we don't mean that in a positive way, like, oh, look at him. He's so apathetic. He doesn't do his math. No, we mean it in a negative way because it means that, you don't care and you're not really invested. A lot of people show apathy about maybe like serious issues in the world, which is really frustrating because, like if there's some big issue that's happening like climate change and the people in charge are showing apathy, then obviously they're not invested and they don't care and they're not going to do anything. So apathy, not caring, not a positive word, unlike sympathy and empathy, which are pretty positive because it means that you are caring about other people. And then pathogen, from the disease side of the definition, a pathogen is any microorganism that causes disease. So it could be bacteria, it could be a virus, it could be any tiny little thing, that is causing bad things to happen. Pathogens is sort of just a generic term for something that causes a disease. So next up are our prefixes. So like I said earlier, we have E and X, which means out or away from. And exhale, you already know what exhale means, but now you kind of understand that inhale versus exhale means, to breathe in versus to breathe out because X means out. I have over the years had students who have said outhale, inhale, outhale, and I'm like, that's not a word. It's definitely exhale. But it means to breathe out, of course. And then I gave you egress, which is a fancy word for exit. So gress means like to go, like progress. And E obviously means out. And so the word egress is just a fancy word for an exit. Like if you make an egress, it means you're making an exit, or if you go out the egress, you're going out the exit. And this might seem like a word that nobody needs to know, but there is kind of an interesting story attached. So P.T. Barnum, who was of the Barnum and Bailey Circus Company, he was known for sort of messing with the public. Like his whole goal in life was sort of make money off of people by tricking them. Hence a lot of the stuff in the circus, like, the people that were in the quote unquote freak show, like the bearded lady and stuff like that. And so one day, P.T. Barnum had people come to the circus and he said, "Hey, everybody this way, $5 to see the egress." And everybody was like, "Ooh, the egress, what's that?" And so they all paid their money and he led them straight to the exit and walked them right out the door. So it's important to know what fancy words mean so that you don't get tricked like those people. And then we have post, which means after. So I gave you postpone, and then I gave you the word posthumous, which might be a word that you've never heard before. So postpone, you know what that means, to put off until another time. Pone is literally from the Latin word to put. So it does mean to put off, to, put after, basically. And then posthumous means after death. So sometimes people are awarded like an Academy Award after death. Like if they died before the Academy Awards, you might hear that this has been awarded posthumously, which is a really fancy word that just means after death. But it's used a lot in like in the art community and places like that where people are given things or might make money. You might hear like Vincent van Gogh didn't make any money when he was alive, but posthumously he made, a ton of it. And so that just means after death. And it is pronounced posthumous and not posthumous, just so you know. And that is the end of our list for this week. So you will have an activity later this week using the words. And then next week, of course, we'll have our quiz. I will make a Kahoot again that you can play as a challenge at home to kind of review. And you can make Quizlet flashcards and send me the link at any time. You can attach the link just as like a private comment on the quiz. When you click turn in, you can also just write me a little comment with your Quizlet link for your flashcards to get bonus points, or you can share it with me over email. Either one is fine. But sometime between now and next Friday, if you want to make those electronic flashcards and get yourself some bonus points, I think that would be a great idea.